At Thanksgiving, my grandson mocked, "Why is he here? He brings nothing." His parents nodded while my chest tightened with shame. I lowered my head, pretending I hadn't heard. But when I unwrapped a hidden package, the room froze. Shook the entire room. Before you get too comfortable, tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if your screen is lit by a kitchen light, a train window, or your own quiet room where no one talks to you unless they need something. Tell me because I want to know how far these words travel, and whether they land in a place where someone has sat at a table like mine. Polite faces, warm food, and a cold stare that slices across the tablecloth. Thanksgiving had filled the house with butter and cinnamon and the slow sigh of the heater, but under it all there was a tightness, a hush, a feeling that even the walls were listening. My grandson twisted in his chair and lifted his chin at me like a judge. Why is he here? He brings nothing. The words were light for him, a simple, cruel sentence tossed like a crumpled napkin. But the weight of it pressed on my chest until breathing felt like work. My son didn't correct him. His wife didn't frown. They nodded. I felt the nod more than I saw it, the way a person feels thunder through the floorboards before the sound arrives. I lowered my head and traced a line on the table with my thumb, pretending I hadn't heard, pretending I was a piece of furniture that didn't need defending. The turkey steamed, the candles flickered, and inside me, something old and steady woke up. I used to hate moments like this because they arrive without warning, like a crack in a favorite glass. You lift it and it looks fine, and then the light hits it, and the crack shines at you, and you know the glass is already broken even if it still holds water. That's how the word nothing felt. It shone. It told me that what I had feared for months was true. In front of strangers, my son would call me father. In front of family, he called me he and him. And even those little words were generous compared to that new one. Nothing. I kept my face calm. I kept my hand still. I swallowed and it sounded loud to me. Across the table, the boy grinned, proud of his line like a comedian who finally got a laugh. He was only repeating what he had heard. That was clear. Children are tape recorders with legs. He didn't come up with this. He borrowed it from the people who should have known better. Smells can pull a man through time. The gravy's hint of time took me straight back to a different kitchen. A smaller one with a loose cabinet door I never got around to fixing because your mother always said, "Leave it. Its squeak is part of the house." I can still see her in a soft sweater, hair pinned up with a pencil, swaying from stove to counter like music only she could hear. She would flick flour onto my nose to make me laugh after a long shift. "Sit, rest," she'd say, sliding a plate in front of me with a pie cooling by the window. Our boy, before he learned how to sneer, used to race in and out with a wooden truck and crash it into my shoes, then crawl into my lap without asking. I worked the late shift, the early shift, any shift that would keep lights on and shoes on his feet. I missed birthdays and baseball games, and every time the guilt wore me down, she put her hands on my face and said, "He'll understand one day." She believed the future would be kind. I believed it because she did. Back at the table, my son adjusted his tie like the turkey was a boardroom. He spoke to the relatives on his left about a contract and a bonus, and his wife filled in the details with a sharp smile. The cousins chuckled at the right times. The boy, emboldened by the calm approval around him, tapped his fork against his glass and swung one knee over the other as if he owned the room. "He just sits," he said. "He brings nothing." He said it again, and there it was, proof that a lesson had been taught. I watched the words land on 24 plates, on cranberry sauce, on bread rolls brushed with butter. Nobody brushed them off. Nobody said, "That's your grandfather. You don't speak that way." Nobody said, "Say you're sorry." My son carved slices that somehow skipped my plate. He didn't look at me. It takes practice to not look at someone you know so well, to make them invisible. He had put in that practice and now he was good at it. If you're still with me, tell me where you'd be sitting at this table. By the window with the draft, or by the kitchen door where the talk from the stove spills in? I ask because placing you somewhere helps me breathe. It helps me speak simply, without the anger that wants to run ahead and throw plates. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I reached for my water and felt my hand steady itself. Not anger, something colder. A slow, level tide that lifts anything foolish and floats it out to sea where it belongs. I tasted the water as if it were wine, and the coolness calmed my chest. My head stayed bowed, but my eyes moved carefully. I watched patterns. The way my son's wife pressed her lips between bites. The way my son's jaw tightened when his stories were questioned. The way the boy mimicked both, tiny muscles copying large ones. Patterns tell you where a person will step next. If you know the steps, you know the dance. If you know the dance, you stop being a guest at the party. You become the music. Do you want to know what I said? Nothing, not then. I let them talk. I let them perform their version of Thanksgiving where I was the joke. I cut my roll and spread butter carefully, not because I was hungry, but because deliberate motion keeps a man from shaking. The heater clicked and hummed. The yard outside was a sheet of fallen leaves pressed flat by last night's rain. The porch light made a small circle on the path, and in that circle a moth beat itself against the light bulb again and again, fooled by brightness. I felt a sad kinship with that moth. But I was not going to keep hitting the same light. Not tonight. Tonight, I had brought something that was not a story and not a plea. It was small. It was quiet. It would be enough. The boy finished a second helping and leaned back, smug and sleepy. "Are we done?" he asked, almost a yawn. He wanted free time in the living room with a football game and a new video. My son stopped him with a hand that tried to look gentle and looked controlling instead. "We're not done," he said, still not looking at me. He turned to the relatives and began another story about numbers on a screen that looked good. He talked about the house improvements as if he had built the roof with his bare hands. He talked about how expensive life was, how tight budgets were, how this holiday had stretched them thin. His wife nodded, and when she nodded, the boy nodded with her, like a row of toy dogs in a car window. The sentence they didn't say out loud but made sure I heard under every other one was simple. "We do so much. He does nothing. A house remembers who loved it. Wood absorbs handprints. Steps record the weight of a person who comes home late and tries not to wake anyone. The kitchen door still has the scratch, where your mother yanked it open too fast with a bag of apples, banging against it because she always bought more than we needed, in case the neighbors dropped by." I looked at that scratch and felt my chest loosen. The house was on my side. The rooms might be full of people who had forgotten, but the structure had not. That thought put a thin smile on my face, the kind you see on a chess player who sees 3 moves ahead and knows he will not need a speech to win. A flat voice, a slow smile. Not anger, something colder. I had rehearsed that calm for months when I stood in front of the safe at dawn with the window still black and the first bus growling past. I had imagined this table, this food, this hush. I had imagined my son's face when I finally made him look at me. I didn't plan to humiliate anyone. Humiliation rots the person who serves it. I planned to say truth out loud and then let it stand on its own legs. But truth on paper is stronger than truth in a voice, and I had brought paper that did not bend when people frowned. I slid my hand into the inside pocket of my coat and felt the little package. It was wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with a thin string because I am an old man, and old men tie things with string. The knot was neat. The corners were sharp. My thumb pressed against the ridge of folded paper, and I knew without looking which edge hid the opening. Tonight was not a surprise for me. It was a surprise for them. The whispers at the table turned into laughter. Someone made a joke about old songs. Someone else added a story that had me in it and trimmed me into a fool who couldn't use a smartphone. The room enjoyed that story. It was easy, and at a holiday table, easy laughter is like extra gravy. No one refuses it. My grandson studied me while they laughed. He was waiting to see if I would crumble like a cupcake too old to hold its shape. I met his eyes for the first time that night and gave him a look I used to give his father when the toy truck aimed at the cat. He blinked. It was small, but it was a change. Maybe the boy saw for 1 second the person under the stories. Maybe he didn't. It didn't matter. The package was warm against my palm now. The tide inside me was rising, and I was done being driftwood. When dessert plates appeared, the candles were shorter. Wax had pooled around their bases and hardened into little lakes where wicks swam like black fish. Your mother would have said the lakes looked sad and then laughed for calling wax sad. I missed her then with a sudden ache that made my throat sting. I heard her voice, not as a memory, but in the room beside me. You don't have to shout to be heard. She was always right about small things, and she was always right about the big ones too. I set my napkin on the table. I slid my chair back a few inches. The scrape of the chair leg on the floor got everyone's attention in a way my presence hadn't. All heads turned, even the boys. I didn't stand up. I was done standing to prove I existed. I stayed seated and put both hands on the table where they could see them, an old carpenter showing he held no hammer. "Before dessert," I said, and my voice was flat and clear, "I have something to share." Forks paused mid-air. My son blinked, irritated that I would interrupt his flow. He was already shaping a polite sentence to put me back in my place. "You can tell by the way the tongue touches the teeth too early. They are rehearsing the 'Dad, not now' before the first word is out." His wife put a hand on his wrist. She thought she was calming him. She was holding him in place. I laid the small package in the space where my plate should have been. I had not touched the turkey, and now I was glad. A clean plate is a good stage. The brown paper looked dull against the white, the string a thin line that meant nothing to anyone but me. "I won't take long," I said. I didn't look at my son. I looked at the boy. He looked back, and this time he didn't smirk. He was curious, which is the cleanest emotion a child has. I tugged the knot free. The string came loose with one slow pull, the sound of friction soft as a whisper. I folded it and set it beside the plate because your mother would have scolded me for dropping it on the tablecloth. The paper fell open like a mouth, and inside was a smaller envelope sealed with a strip of tape turned yellow at the edges. "Maybe you want drama here." A raised voice, someone standing, a hand slammed on wood. "You won't get it from me." The room made its own drama. Breaths held, eyes narrowed. Dessert stopped. The heater sighed. Outside, a car rolled past slow, as if even the street wanted to see. The envelope wasn't thick. It didn't need to be. The things that weigh the most sometimes travel light. I slid a thumb under the tape and lifted it clean. No tearing, no rush. I took the papers out and set them on the plate where a slice of pie should have been. Across from me, my son folded his arms. His jaw worked. His wife put on the smile she wears for waiters when she sends food back. The boy leaned forward, elbows on the table, breaking one of the rules his mother always recites but didn't enforce now because she wanted to see too. "Before I speak about the papers, I want you to see something else." The way the room changed shape. A few minutes earlier, I had been small and quiet in a chair, a light coat, a thin presence. Now the plate with paper on it weighed more than the turkey. The air had a new center. People feel gravity even if they don't know they're feeling it. Their eyes circled the plate as if it were a drain pulling everything toward it. That's not a trick. That's truth doing what truth does when you finally let it out, finding the lowest point and filling it until there's no room for lies. "I won't read much," I said. I touched the first page and then slid it under the second instead of lifting it, because I wanted them to see not the words first, but the dates and the stamps and the signatures, the bones of the story, not the flourishes. The old notary stamp was there, clean and round. The dates lined up across years that had bent me and built them. The names printed neatly, the same last name in two places, one in my script and one in a lawyer's careful hand. I saw my wife's name in a place where only I would expect it. I saw the trust's title, the one we chose together at a table that smelled of ink and winter coats, when our son still wore his hair too long and asked to borrow the car without checking how much gas it had. Memory rose like heat from a road in summer, a shimmer you can see but can't touch. I kept my fingers still. My son finally found a sentence. "Dad," he said, with the sigh people use for a stranger in a checkout line who forgot his wallet. "Let's not do—" He didn't finish. He couldn't because he didn't know where this was going and he was afraid to show it. His wife's fingers pressed deeper into his wrist. She did not smile now. She was measuring the way you measure distance to a door. The boy whispered, "What is it?" And I could hear a small thread of worry in the whisper, the first hairline crack in his new armor. Good. Worry can be the first honest thing a heart says. I let silence answer for a count of 5. I learned that trick not from business or books, but from marriage. Your mother could end an argument with a pause. A pause is a mirror. It makes people look at themselves, and they rarely like what they see. 5 beats, And then I spoke in a voice as plain as a grocery list. "You said I bring nothing," I said, and I looked at the boy so he would know I was answering him and not the chorus behind him. "I brought something. I always have. I just didn't ask you to clap for it." I tapped the plate once after I said it, a tiny sound that started in the wood and ran down the table. The cousins shifted. Someone cleared a throat. The heater clicked again. A log in the fireplace gave way and sent up a quick flare. I didn't look away. If you were here, if your chair scraped next to mine and you leaned in to smell the paper and the smoke and the lemon polish on the table, you would see my hands weren't shaking. In the glare of mockery, I had found a stillness I had forgotten I owned. I slid the top sheet a little to the left, so the name of the house, the way lawyers name a house as if it is a boat, sat plainly under the light. The paper caught the flames' dance. Little gold waves ran across the ink. Across from me, my son finally let his eyes touch the plate. He didn't want to. You can spot a man who built his power on stories because he avoids anything that doesn't listen back. Paper doesn't listen, it tells. He leaned forward half an inch, and for the first time that night he looked not at the guests or at his wife, but at me. It was a reflex. He couldn't help it. Men look for the source of a tide when they feel their chair float. His eyes were brown like his mother's, and for one heartbeat, I saw him at 6 years old, knees skinned, braces crooked, asking me if the moon followed our car. People think time moves forward in a line. It doesn't, it folds. The boy and the man were in his eyes together. Then the fold flattened and the man swallowed. "What is this?" he said. "It's the part," I said softly. "You forgot." He waited for a clever comeback, the kind that gathers a room on its side, but nothing came. The paper on the plate made its own weather. "You could feel the pressure in your ears. It's the part you forgot," I said again, slow enough that he could not pretend he misheard. I lifted the top sheet so that the names and numbers and stamps sat naked under the candlelight. "The house," I said. "Its bones, its roof, the quiet that keeps the rain out, belongs to me. Not to your stories, not to your pride. To me." I turned the next page. "And this," I added, tapping the trust document with a fingertip that didn't tremble, "is the part that keeps you honest. Your mother and I set it up when you were still borrowing the car and swearing you'd put gas in it next time. The trust owns the house. I'm the trustee. You are not." The word "not" landed without a raised voice. Across the table, napkins stalled halfway to mouths. My grandson leaned forward so far his chair squeaked and he didn't notice. His mother noticed. Her knuckles went pale where her hand gripped my son's wrist. He tried to smile, a small, thin thing that didn't fit his face. "Dad, this isn't necessary," he said, aiming for kind and hitting condescension instead. This is Thanksgiving. We're having a nice dinner, and I'm sure—" I slid the next document onto the top of the stack. It was older. It smelled faintly of dry cardboard in winter. "That's your mother's handwriting," I said, and his mouth closed as if a string had been pulled. The note wasn't long. She had written it the day we signed, in the waiting room on a magazine so old the cover was from a summer 2 years gone. She wrote, "If ever the house forgets its heart, remind it." She signed her name with the little curl only I could ever draw just right when she made me sign cards for her sore hands. I didn't need to read it to the room. The look on his face said he could see every loop. The room's sound changed then. Not louder, quieter, but with edges. You hear forks touch plates instead of scrape them. You hear the small air through someone's nose when they're trying not to cry. You hear the way a chair leg chooses not to move. My son's wife cleared her throat once in a neat, precise way, and then kept her lips pressed together. She was counting. Not money, not yet, risks. She looked at the deed again, at the trust's name, at the trustee's rights, at the little clause I'd asked the lawyer to tuck in, because I have always been a man who tightens a second screw. I tapped the clause with my fingertip. "It says," I told the boy, because children deserve plain talk, that if the trustee is made to feel unwelcome, he may remove any resident from the premises within 30 days. He may also convert the property to any use that honors the name on the trust. I let that settle the way sugar sinks in tea. "Your grandmother's name," I said, softer than the paper. My son sat back as if someone had taken a finger off his forehead. He searched my face for the old softness and didn't find it. You wouldn't do that, he said. But the sentence was a child's, not a man's. It bent in the middle when it should have stood straight. I folded the papers into a tidy pile and kept my palm on them, the way a captain keeps a hand on the wheel when the channel narrows. You taught your child to call me nothing, I said, still level. You watched him say it. You nodded. For months I've watched you train him to see me as heir. Today you wanted him to perform it at the table. I looked down the length of the wood, at the candles stuttering in their wax lakes, at the bowls cooling, at the pie untouched because the room could no longer pretend sweetness. Now, I said, we're going to teach him something else. I slid out the last paper, thinner, newer. It was not stamped. It was typed in a clean, modern font. This is a scholarship agreement. For one student each year at the community trade school across town, the place with the broken sign you used to laugh at when you were 17 and thought your life needed neon to be real. My son blinked. This paper wasn't in his plan. The scholarship has a name, I said. It's your mother's. It helps a kid who works hard and doesn't have much. I've seeded it from the accounts you thought were empty because you think status is balance and stake. I shifted my gaze to the boy and let him feel seen. Really seen. The way I used to watch his father for the flicker that meant he was about to cry and needed a joke more than a lecture. There's a second scholarship if it's wanted, I added. For any family member who proves with deeds that they understand respect, is action, not talk. It begins with an apology, not a forced one, a real one, words that lean forward, not back. I didn't move my hand from the papers. I didn't need to. You don't wave a lighthouse. My grandson looked at his father and then at me. Between those looks a small war happened. You could see it in the way his mouth changed shape, in the way his shoulders forgot to swagger. Children don't know it's a war. They just know something tugged at them from the right side when the left had been winning all night. He swallowed. I didn't mean nothing, he said, small. His mother shifted, ready to coach a better line, but I held up a finger without looking at her. If you didn't mean it, I said, then you can say the thing you do mean. He stared at the table. The grain ran like a river between us. He followed it with his eyes as if an answer might float down. He whispered, I'm sorry. It was so soft the nearest candle almost covered it. I could have left it there. A first step is still a step. But this was not the lesson he needed. This was only the doorframe. Look at me, I said, and he did. His eyes were too clear to lie well. Tell me what you think I bring. He took a breath that didn't fill his chest. You bring... He stopped. He tried again. You bring stories, he said, uncertain. It made me want to laugh and cry at the same time because stories are how men survive rooms like this. But that wasn't what I was after. I kept my face the same. He tried one more time. You bring... this house? His father's jaw clicked hard at that, warning him away from the answer. The boy saw the warning. He looked down fast. He didn't yet know that a warning from the wrong place is a map to the right place. I bring roofs, I said quietly. I bring light in winter and fans in summer. I bring shoes that fit and a front door that locks without sticking and gas in the car when no one is looking. I bring a doctor when the cough goes deep and a ride at 2 a.m., when the battery forgets how to be a battery. I bring silence when loud would feel good and ruin everything. And I bring your grandmother's name into rooms where people think names are decorations. That's what I bring. And I brought all that before this paper, and I'll bring it after, as long as I'm asked with respect. I let the words sit in him. They looked like they might fit. They just needed trying on. My son found his courage then, the wrong kind, the kind that puffs instead of roots. So what? He said tone hard. You're going to evict your own family? Over a bad joke? He tried to gather the room with a look as if he could collect loose sympathy and stack it behind him. He didn't notice that even the cousins with the easy laughs were watching the papers, not his face. No, I said, and the word made him flinch because it was gentle. I'm going to give you a choice. I slid a second set of pages from the bottom of the stack, fresh copies, crisp as a new shirt. Option 1, you apologize for what you've been teaching in this house and you stop teaching it. Not tonight or tomorrow only, every day after that. You pay rent to the trust. A fair rent, not a penny more, not a penny less. You treat this roof as borrowed from a woman who believed in you more than you believed in yourself. Option 2. You have 30 days to move. I will convert this home to the use it should have had from the start. A place that holds people up in her name. The downstairs can be a study center. The upstairs can house a family with nowhere warm to sleep. The kitchen can feed mouths that don't get pie on holidays. Either way, I added, because you must tell the whole truth. I will sleep fine. I did the long work already. The word convert rolled around the room and found every ear that understood what it costs to change a place and what it costs not to. My son's wife drew in a breath measured in inches. She knew the claws had teeth. She had likely told him, a long time ago, to keep me sweet. They hadn't, and that was that. You wouldn't embarrass us, my son said, trying dignity on his way through the sentence. You'd look small, I shook my head. I already looked small, I said. Tonight at your table with your nodding. I'm done with that. I turned to the boy again because children shouldn't be left alone on emotional islands built by adults. I won't take your bed, I said. I won't take your books. But I will not let you learn that cruelty is a joke. The whole world will try to teach you that. Not here. The next sound wasn't a sentence. It was a chair leg. My son stood, not quickly like a man walking into a cold lake because the heat behind him is worse. Around us, families shifted to make space for a scene, but he surprised me. He didn't shout. He didn't point. He put both hands on the back of his chair and looked down at the wood like it might help. I worked, he said finally, in a voice that belonged to a hallway at night, not a table. I work all the time. You weren't there. You were always at work. He looked at me then, as if he had just found the right address for his resentment and didn't know how to deliver it. It bent something in me I thought had gone hard. He was not wrong about my hours. Old sins don't disappear because you held them for a good reason. I know, I said. I missed things I can't get back. I laid my palm on the papers, the deed with its old stamp, the trust with its sharp claws, the note with her curl. That's why I built this, so you and the ones you love wouldn't have to miss the same things. I kept my hand there. Don't turn my work into a weapon, I said. Not against me. Not against him. I tilted my head toward his son. Silence again. The kind with shape. He looked at his wife. She had that good, fierce light in her eyes people get when they see the cliff edge and want to stop the car. She gave her head a single small shake. Pride didn't flinch. Pride never wants to be the first to drop its sword. But something else shifted in him. An older muscle. The one that remembers the weight of a wooden truck and a hand on a smaller skull keeping it from hitting a table edge. He breathed out and let his hands leave the chair back. All right, he said, not to me but to the room, because he needed to hear himself say it. Then he turned to me and tried again, softer. All right, he sat down. His voice, when it came, had gravel in it. I'm sorry, he said. And he didn't look at the plates or the guests. He looked at me. For what I've said. For what I've allowed. For making him think. He stopped because the sentence was too ugly to finish. We'll pay rent, he said, as if it hurt and healed at the same time. We'll sign whatever you need. We'll fix it. The room didn't clap. It breathed, and the breath had warmth in it again. My grandson's shoulders dropped a half-inch. He looked at me, and then at his father and back, figuring out how two truths can stand in the same room without fighting to the death. Can I help at the study center? He asked suddenly, surprising himself. He blushed and tried to cover the question with a shrug, but the question had already flown and perched where it wanted. I smiled, not steel now, something else. You just did, I said. But yes, you can carry boxes and wipe tables and be the one who opens the door. He nodded hard in a way that made his hair flop and made him young again for a second. The true kind of young that can still be turned by a hand on the shoulder and a clear sentence in the ear. I stacked the papers, corners aligned. There's dignity in neatness. It tells the room you're not afraid to be seen. I put the scholarship agreement on top and slid it toward the boy. Take it to your room later. Read it out loud, I said. When words move the air, they move the heart that lives in that air. He touched the top edge with a fingertip like it might be hot. Is my name in it? He asked. Not yet, I said. Names are invitations. You'll earn it. You begin with, I'm sorry. You continue with, can I help? You end with the part you choose. I did. He nodded again, and I looked at his father. He nodded too, slow, like his neck hurt and was finally stretching. People think justice is thunder. Sometimes it is a table where pie is cut and handed around without anyone needing to say who gets the first slice. Dessert resumed with a hush that wasn't fear this time, but attention, like the room had been tuned and now every note meant something. I tasted the pie. It was good in a way. Food can be good when your mouth is no longer full of iron. Your mother would have scolded me for not wrapping the string properly, I said to my son, and he huffed a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't yet a sob. She'd have told me to save it in the drawer with the other string so we could find it at Christmas. He rubbed his thumb against the table's edge, tracing the groove his toy truck had made 25 years ago. She would have, he said, and the truth of it softened every shoulder by an ounce. Later, when coffee was poured and the heater hummed like a big cat at peace, relatives stood and hugged and said small things that tried not to step on the new quiet. No one said what a scene, because the scene hadn't been a scene. It had been a correction. People can feel the difference, and they respect it even when they don't know how to name it. My son walked me to the hall where the coats hung. He took down my old one, the one with the single loose button I always forget to fix because it reminds me I still have work. He held it while I slipped my arm through. I shouldn't have let him talk that way, he said, not as a performance, but like a man telling a priest the thing he needs to carry out of the booth as a lighter man. No, I said, because names matter. You taught him to. He nodded once, and it hurt him but cleaned him. I did, he said. I won't again. We stood with that for a breath. Come by Sunday, he added, and his voice stumbled on the invitation. Well, there's a game. Or we could just... He didn't finish. Invitations don't need decorations. Sunday, I said. Bring the lease to sign. Bring your appetite. We'll practice being a family. On my way out, I paused with my hand on the frame of the front door. Wood remembers. I could feel beneath the paint the indentations of keys, of rings, of seasons. I spoke under my breath where only the house could hear me. We're not done, I told it. We're just remembering your heart. The porch light pooled its little circle on the wet path, and the moth still beat itself against the bulb, stubborn and foolish and brave. I cupped my palm around it and coaxed it off the glass. It rested for a second, stunned by the absence of heat, then fluttered up into the dark where it belonged. You don't save a moth with speeches. You open your hand. I walked to the gate, and the cold didn't reach me, because there are nights when a man is warmed by what he has finally said. In my pocket, the brown paper lay folded with the neat string, and I smiled because she would have wanted me to put them in the drawer with the other strings. I will. Sunday I'll fix the loose button. Sunday I'll sit at the same table in a house that has learned how to be itself again. The boy will stumble over a new sentence and then stand on it. My son will sign his name where it carries weight instead of taking it. And somewhere, her name will be said at a study table beside a broken sign that someone will fix because the door is open now and the lights are on and there is pie left for anyone who comes late. I will wash the plates without fuss. I will turn off the porch light and check the lock twice and breathe with the house until it falls asleep. If you felt anything in this story, if it made you remember your own table, or your own roof, or the quiet power of a paper that tells the truth, like this, share it with someone who needs it. Drop a comment about where you're watching from. And subscribe so you don't miss the next story.